Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines, and in this programme tonight we'll be discussing the attempted assassination of the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump at a political campaign rally in Pennsylvania. We'd be discussing the divine intervention by God who actually saved his life last Saturday evening that could have sparked a civil war. And we'd be asking, has political rhetoric created the political climate where we see that someone would dare take the life of Donald Trump? And we'll be asking, what impact will this have on this year's US presidential election? I'm joined tonight by Alistair Scott, my co-host. Alistair, great to see you. And such an important news story to discuss, really, that even our secular newspapers are reporting the fact that this was divine intervention on behalf of the God of Israel that protected Donald Trump last Saturday evening.
Exactly. I mean, the first thing he himself, President Trump, gave glory to God and acknowledged it was, I mean, everyone has said that if it wasn't for just the movement of the head, he wouldn't have been with us. And that was definitely God intervening. And, you know, it is a reminder for us, you know, to pray for those in authority, those kings and queens and presidents and prime ministers, even those who are not necessarily your favorite person. We're just told we shouldn't have an opinion, but just pray.
No, absolutely. So let's have a recap of what happened. So on Saturday, the 13th of July, a US Republican presidential candidate and former president Donald Trump was at a campaign rally in Bulter, Pennsylvania, where he was addressing the crowd when he was shot. Trump was covered in blood and then was rushed off the stage by secret agents. Trump was taken to a nearby hospital and was declared safe by his Secret Service in what was an horrific assassination attempt on the life of the presidential candidate. A shocked and shaken Donald Trump said at the time, "Thank you to everyone for your thoughts and prayers yesterday, as it was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening." We'll be discussing what impact the attempted assassination on Trump's life will have on the US presidential election 2024 and for the future of US democracy in this toxic and divisive political climate. Of course, last weekend makes us think about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the assassination of JFK, and of course the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan's life back in March of 1981. And of course, the image that we just saw there, a defiant Trump covered in blood, putting his fists in the air, shouting, "Fight, fight, fight," will go down as one of the most iconic images of the 21st century and will no doubt win Trump the presidency come November's presidential election. I mean, these are just extraordinary times in which we're living in. I mean, firstly, we have to acknowledge that Trump's opponents, those in the Democrats Party, including Biden, and also the liberal media, have a huge plot to play in ratcheting up the rhetoric and the comparisons between Trump and Hitler, a fascist. These all play parts in the American population, and of course, this had an impact on the shooter who tried to assassinate Trump last Saturday.
Yes, without a doubt. Unfortunately, with campaigning, there seems to be no rules and regulations, and people do almost anything to bring down the opponent. And without a doubt, using words as you've just explained there about Trump would have certainly turned some people's hearts towards doing. In fact, there has even been mention about killing him, taking him out, you know, making him the bullseye or whatever it was that I think Biden said. And that'll stir up the hearts of people on one side or the other. And you know what we've seen, the hostility between the one side and the other is getting bigger and bigger. And I mean, there's been an immediate call for let's be united as a nation. It is a miracle that Donald Trump is still alive and still able to campaign. They've gone into the Republican Congress meetings now, it'll surely bring people to think, yes, and particularly Christians, not only in America but here too, we should be praying for all those people who are in the front line. And this shot, if it wasn't for the hand of God, there's no doubt Donald Trump wouldn't have been here today. So it's an important.
And this could have sparked a civil war. But let's have a look now and recap on those historic events that occurred last Saturday evening when a gunman attempted to take the life of US President Donald Trump, which would have sparked major violence and political chaos across the United States.
Authorities are still looking for a motive behind the shooting of former President Donald Trump. The 20-year-old left no manifesto and no clues on social media as to why he carried out the attack. Gunfire erupting just minutes into Trump's speech.
I've seen the bullets go flying towards the stage.
He grabs his right ear and ducks behind the podium.
We were on the stands. We were about 25 feet behind him, maybe 30 feet, and I could hear zing, zing. I could hear the bullets go, and I saw him go like this, like a bee had stung him, and within seconds he was on the ground and the Secret Service was all over top of him.
The sniper returning fire and stopping the attack in seconds.
Until he identified it as a threat, it was an individual from 200 yards moving on a rooftop. He had a very difficult job, identified the threat, and neutralized it within a second.
After the Secret Service got Trump to his feet, he pumps his fist in the air, shouting "fight," and is rushed from the scene. Were you relieved when he put his fist up and you could see he was okay?
Yes. Oh my God, yeah. We thought they killed him. We thought they killed him. We really did.
Just pure evil, you know. And, you know, Jesus had his, you know, he poured his precious blood over him, over Trump, protected him.
In an interview with the New York Post, Trump said that if he hadn't turned his head to read a chart, he would not have survived the attack. "I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead," he said. "I'm supposed to be dead." 2 people in the crowd were critically injured, another killed. Corey Comparator was a 50-year-old father and former Pennsylvania fire chief. Pennsylvania's governor paying tribute on Sunday.
Corey was a firefighter. Corey dove on his family to protect them last night.
Trump's rally was his last before the Republican National Convention. He was showing a chart of border crossing numbers when the shots rang out. The fairgrounds behind me are now an active crime scene.
This is just a bad day.
You were right there?
I was right there, right in front by the railing, the fence, and I could see Donald Trump, and I seen him holding his ear. This has got to stop. This has got to stop.
The gunman has been identified as 20-year-old Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Investigators say an AR-15 style rifle recovered at the scene was legally purchased by his father, and that explosives were found in his car. Investigators believe he acted alone. This image shows the roof where he carried out his attack. This man says he tried repeatedly to warn the Secret Service that a man was climbing onto the roof.
We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us. We're like, hey, right here on the roof, we can see him from right here. We see him. He's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, why is Trump still speaking?
A local police officer nearly confronted the shooter, but retreated when he pointed the gun at him. With the Republican National Convention starting in Milwaukee today, President Biden says he's directed the Secret Service to review all security protocols for the event. Meanwhile, a House committee has called on the head of the Secret Service to testify about why this assassination attempt nearly succeeded. In Butler, Pennsylvania, Tara Mergener, CBN News.
A great report there put together by our friends at CBN. I mean, what I find astonishing with that news report is that this was an intelligence failure on a huge scale. We know that Donald Trump had the US Secret Service protecting him when we saw them dive on him when he got shot, and there were a couple of snipers. But the fact is that a police officer saw a young man on top of a building with a rifle aimed at the police officer. They should have actually then stopped the rally from taking place, say there is a huge security threat, but it went ahead. So, I mean, I think huge question marks need to be asked regarding the security of President Trump. And we call him president because in America, once you're a president, you're always American president. And despite the fact that our media describe him as the Republican presidential candidate or a former president, he's still president. So I just want to clear that up. But it does show that really this was an intelligence failure on behalf of the US Secret Service, on behalf of those who are supposed to be protecting Donald Trump from assassination. So I don't know what went wrong, but clearly this wasn't good enough.
It is definitely a big failure in the whole intelligence and the security system, because when the reports came through on Saturday to Sunday, obviously because of time difference here, it was so obvious that people had seen the guy on the rooftop. I mean, it wasn't like he was hidden in a building like as with JFK. You know, he was seen, and he was seen to have a rifle, and it was reported. And then, as you just saw in that report, he was actually confronted, but because he turned the rifle towards the guy backed off. And you know, you'd have thought in any circumstances immediate, you could get to the platform and say, take Donald Trump off because there's a security risk. It didn't happen. So I mean, there's going to be a lot more coming forward in the next few days when there's more and more looking into the case. But terribly sad situation. And we mustn't forget, although Donald Trump escaped with minor injuries, miracle of God, one man was killed and a couple of serious injuries. There's still no definite answer as to the critical injuries that they're under will prove to be death. You know, for two others.
Yeah,
so.
And one of them was Corey. We saw in that news report he was a firefighter. He died protecting his wife and his two daughters, which is absolutely tragic. And please also pray for them and pray also for those recovering who were injured from Saturday night. I mean, Trump thanked his security team for protecting him after that bullet ripped through his ears. But he also said this, and this is quoted from Mark Tapson, writing for Front Page magazine, writes the following. It says, speaking of which, for believers, it's not hard to see the hand of God work in the failure of the assassination. The shooter was positioned barely 150 yards away with a clear line of sight to the former president's on stage. As one Israeli special operations veteran later told Fox News, at that distance, the shot was a putt. Anybody can make it. Had Trump not turned his head to just the slight degree he did at the sound of the gunshot, it would have been lights out. And of course, Donald Trump is the first person to acknowledge God's hand to protection. But I think when you get an Israeli security expert talking on Fox News and saying that this was an easy shot to make for anyone to take out Donald Trump, it really does show the hand of God. It also, I've heard other reports as well, is that apparently there was a tree in the way of the attempted assassin that could have misdirected his shot as well. So praise God, history is his story, and this is why I think all of us, whatever field God calls us to do, really need to pray for God's protection. Psalm 91, make sure that we wear the full armour of God, and we thank God for God's protection over Donald Trump, because if he hadn't, I fear this would have sparked a bloody violent response. And who knows where America would be after that, having to find a new presidential candidate. They will say that the Democrats incited this murder, Biden's to blame, and the political fallout of this would have been just horrific.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have a mutual friend in ministry based in Florida, and since the last election, he talked about the hostility between left and right, if we want to call it that, and the potential of there being some kind of civil warfare if things didn't change. And you could see if this shot had done what it was meant to do. As Donald Trump himself said, I was supposed to be dead. I was supposed to be dead. But God's hand was upon him. So there is a purpose and a reason for him to be still alive and still a candidate for the presidency. And as you said earlier, this kind of almost favors him even more, because people who are sitting on the fence are going to think, you know, there's something about this man we need to come get behind. But as intercessors, I mean, there must have been intercessors in the USA that were really lifting up their voices and crying out, because, you know, the Holy Spirit would have alerted. He keeps us alert to pray at the right times.
All the Christians at the rally themselves, don't forget that as well. And once they heard a couple of those bullets go off in the crowd, I mean, that's the first thing you do is pray, right?
Exactly. That's definitely the call of being alert in these days as to what's going on spiritually as well as politically. So we are so pleased to hear and see that he is fighting fit. His reaction was amazing. I mean, we saw it in that film, a clip there that he had his fist up and saying, fight, fight, fight. And of course, you know, fight, fight, fight. We're not talking about the natural fighting. We're talking about the spiritual fight that's going on as believers. How often it is for us to understand there is a war in the spiritual realm, and we are the troops on the ground. So we need to be fighting alongside God's chosen one. I mean, we don't know the result of the election until November, but, you know, we pray for safety. Psalm 91, as you said, you know, we need to cover those leaders in those words of God and make sure that they are hearing clearly where to be and with the timings of the Lord.
Absolutely, and no doubt that you know, for Trump to have survived an assassination attempt on his life, to actually feel the pain as the bullet went into his ear, no doubt would have shot a bit of his ear off. He would actually then be thinking, look, I am very, very blessed to be alive. And it will make him think about his life. It will make him think about his walk with God. We know, for example, that his wife, Melinda Trump, is a born-again believer, and that's the Christian influence over him. We know that he's sympathetic to a Christian audience, but he hasn't really come out and made that own personal statement of faith, even though he called himself a Christian. We need to look at the fruits of that, which are not there. He's sympathetic, but this may just allow God to really work on his heart and accept him as his Lord and Saviour, and to walk with Jesus and to walk in the power of the Holy Spirit. So not only did this save Trump, I think this also could have saved America as well. So this is how Donald Trump describes the miracle. He said that he's supposed to be dead, and went on to describe the attempt on his life as a surreal experience. He says, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be dead, he said in his first interview after the government opened fire at his rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday, killing a spectator and wounding 2. He says the doctor at the hospital said he never saw anything like this and called it a miracle. Trump told the New York Post en route to Milwaukee, the Republican National Convention, that said they took him out with one shot between his eyes. They did a fantastic job. It's surreal for us, talking about the snipers who took out the assassin. Then Trump called for the country to reject political division, and even his own allies blamed Joe Biden for the attack. He said, thank you to everyone for your thoughts and prayers yesterday. It was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening. We will not, he says, we fear not, but instead remain resilient in our faith and defiant in the face of wickedness. He added, in this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show the true character as Americans, retaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win. And I think he sums it up very well, because what Donald Trump faced on Saturday, the 13th of July, was evil. This was an evil plot to take out a potential US president in the election race and just bring absolute chaos and mayhem to America, to American society, and also to this very divisive and inflammatory presidential election race.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I'm certain, you know, Saturday he would have woken up on a normal day expecting to share his speech and just get his supporters behind him. there's no way he'd have been expecting an assassination attempt on his life. And I think anyone, no, not that I've ever even had anything close to that happen in my life. I think when you see and you realize the guy was close enough to be able, it's almost a straightforward shot, as the report you read earlier, like a putt that even a non-golfer could
That's
get.
about 110 meters,
yeah,
or 130 yards away. Which was incredibly close. If you
Very
look at the
close.
Olympics and you look at the 100 meters race, it's not very far. And considering these sniper guns and rifles, that they can take their target out from 1.5 miles and 2 miles away, shows you how close he was. And he had plenty of time to get Donald Trump in his sights.
Yeah, and they're going to have the telescopic situations there that they can see their target so easily. And yes, and what made Donald Trump just turn slightly to the right, you know, which basically saved his life.
It's got to be an angel.
It has to be the hand of God. And he must know that now and acknowledge it, because he's come so close to death, and he's saying it. And therefore he must realize the hand of God is on his life for a reason, you know, and I hope this is the sort of the spur to take him across the line. Remember, in the last, when he was elected as president, he was surrounded by ministers and leaders of churches praying for him daily before the election, and certainly in the White House, he was surrounded by a team of counselors, real believers, praying into his life. So, you know, everything is there that would have opened up his heart. And I don't think anyone, having gone through this near-death experience, as he has done on Saturday last, will be able to deny. You know, he couldn't have done anything more than he did, other than turn. And it was the hand of God that literally turned his head at that moment.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at a timeline of events that occurred on Saturday, the 13th of July. So at 5 o'clock, US Eastern Standard Time, Donald Trump is scheduled to appear on the stage at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. 6:03, Lee Hazelwood's God Bless the USA plays The Former President begins his appearance at the rally. And then 6:11, loud shots ring out. At 11:12, Secret Service agents surround Trump before he's escorted off the stage. He raises his fist and appears to mouth "fight" as blood streaks down his face. At 6:14 p.m, Trump's motorcade departs with the president. At 6:42, Secret Service confirms Trump is safe in a statement. At 17:03, the former president is fine, his campaign team announces. At 7:45 p.m, it is confirmed that a suspect along with an audience member are dead. At 8:13 p.m, President Joe Biden condemns the attack. So let's have a look at this CBN News report entitled "American Leaders Call the Nation for Soul Searching."
In an Oval Office address, President Biden urged Americans to take a step back and reject violence, saying that politics should never be a killing field.
We stand for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. All of us now face a time of testing as the election approaches. And the higher the stakes, the more fervent the passions become. This places an added burden on each of us to ensure that no matter how strong our convictions, we must never descend into violence.
Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, who is part of a prayer group that regularly meets on Capitol Hill, believes we simply cannot see each other as enemies, irrespective of our different political views.
All of us are reaching out to each other in Congress. As you know, I'm an active member of our senatorial prayer group that tries to not just lower the temperature, but to be role models to each other of how to respect each other as people.
A similar sentiment echoed by South Carolina's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who is thankful knowing just how close the former president came to possibly losing his life. On Sunday, Trump wrote on Truth Social, "It was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening."
I was just grateful that he made it. I mean, fate stepped in, God, the hand of God, call it whatever you like. But for the country, we probably need to do some soul searching as a nation.
In a statement, former First Lady Melania Trump expressed thanks for those who have reached out beyond the political divide to send their support. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, calling political violence un-American, urged citizens to perhaps take a different view of the process.
The bottom line is what we need as a nation, what a democracy is about, is not radical rhetoric. What it is about is a serious discussion of where we are as a nation and how we go forward. You know, in a certain way, Kristen, politics should be kind of boring.
Meanwhile, security experts continue to sound the alarm about growing political violence in our culture, warning that threats against local and state office holders have jumped sharply in recent years.
This is the most complex, dynamic, and dangerous threat environment that I've experienced in the 40 years that I've been working in law enforcement and homeland security. We are an angry, divided nation, and that anger and division has become intertwined in our political discourse. There are a growing number of people in this country who believe that violence is an appropriate way to express their ideological or political views.
Trump is now in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention. He told the New York Post, "I want to try to unite our country, but I don't know if that's possible. People are very divided." Evangelist Greg Laurie urged people to pray for our nation and its leaders, writing on X that America stands at a pivotal crossroads, and now more than ever, we need God, we need the Bible, and we need the redemptive power of Jesus Christ. George Thomas, CBN News.
This week's special guest joining us on Behind Headlines is all the way from the United States. He's Gary Lane. He's the senior reporter for CBN. He also has his own program called Global Lane, which is an exclusively shown on Revelation TV. Gary, warm welcome to Behind Headlines, and great to see you on today's program.
Good to be with you again, Simon.
And Gary, firstly, I want to thank you on behalf of viewers of Revelation TV for your moral clarity and being a light in what is now a very dark world. Can you just give us your thoughts and your reflection on the assassination attempt on US President Donald Trump last Saturday evening?
I praise God and thank God that he spared our nation from political upheaval, that he saved Donald Trump's life. But this is a time now for soul searching in our country. Donald Trump said God alone was responsible for sparing him and saving his life. And we need to reflect on that as a nation. What does that mean for us individually? How about the saving grace that God gives each and every one of us as well, not only a president of the United States?
Gary, just a second question. Donald Trump is already giving God the glory, saying it was God alone who saved him from that assassin's bullet. What impact does this act of grace and mercy on Trump have on him in the Bible-believing Christians in the run-up to the presidential election day in November?
The effect it has had on him, I'm sure he's been changed by it, because he already says the hard-hitting, he maybe even had some nasty things to say in his speech that he had planned for the convention. He said he ripped that up and he's giving a different speech. He wants to unify the nation. And so maybe we'll see a little less of the political rhetoric and the nastiness that we've seen in the past from Donald Trump. Remember, he's a New Yorker. He's used to that kind of fighting. Verbal fighting. It's almost like someone says something against you, then it's, oh yeah, well, I'm going to throw one right back at you. And that's what he was raised in, that environment. But I think God has softened him. We shall see. But we will have a very different speech on Thursday evening here at the convention in Milwaukee than what was originally planned. Now, as far as the Christians, what impact does it have? Of course, evangelicals know this was providential. This was God's grace. This was God's protection over the President of the United States, because right at the moment that bullet came, he turned his head. And when he turned his head, it hit his ear. Had he not turned his head and looked at the Jumbotron, he would be dead now. That bullet would have went right through his brain, and we would not have the 45th president with us anymore. So Christians know that. They're thanking God and praising God. I think what it's doing for us as a community, it's driving us to our knees. We're praying even more now, more fervently for our nation, for our leaders, and that God's will be done, because his will be done in all of this.
Gary, share your thoughts on what many political commentators are saying, that had that assassin killed or murdered President Trump last Saturday evening, this would have resulted in a bloody civil war in America. Just share with us how close America came to the brink of civil war with the assassination attempt on US President Donald Trump.
Simon, I don't know that there would have been a bloody civil war. I think that's a little overblown, but it wouldn't have been good. I'm sure there would have been violence and so forth.
Thanks a lot, Gary. The failed assassin, Gary, he has been reported as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a young man, a 20-year-old loner who was bullied at school. Do we have any further information about a motive yet?
No, the FBI isn't letting us have any information about that. They do have his cell phone. They're looking at social media and so forth, talking to neighbors and friends and so forth. But look, here's the point. How did he get up on that roof without a ladder? There was no ladder found. And you had the building that he got up on the roof on was actually the headquarters or the staging area for local police. They were inside.
Gary, finally, what are your thoughts on the rhetoric that we've seen from Donald Trump's political opponents, namely the Democrats, and also very much the liberal media establishment, in really characterizing Donald Trump as another Hitler, saying that he poses an authoritarian threat to democracy in America and to the Republic? Show us how this dangerous, inflammatory rhetoric really led to this assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life.
You remember just days before the assassination attempt, President Biden said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. And it's this type of rhetoric that inspires violence, incites violence around the country. And our political leaders have been saying this all along, these type of things, calling him Hitler, saying he's a danger to democracy. We've got it from politicians on Capitol Hill. We've got it from media people and even the President of the United States. That does not bring about unity in our country. That does not tone it down a little bit, the political rhetoric, but it needs to be toned down. That's what Christians need to pray for, is that it is toned down. We have a civil election and convention process.
And Gary, finally, what are your thoughts on what's happened to President Trump surviving that assassination attempt? We now have one of the most iconic pictures of the 21st century, with him raising his fists in the air, covered in blood, shouting, "Fight, fight, fight." How much do you think this will have a big impact on the American electorate come the election day in November for the US presidential election?
4 months is a long time in politics, but I hope this means that Christians will come out and vote. Those that may have stayed home because they don't like Trump's nastiness and so forth, they will look at his policies and come out and vote. And this probably may be a unifying moment for them. Also, he may get some sympathy vote. Others who are riding the fence may vote for him, but we'll see. 4 months is a long time in politics.
So, Gary, thank you so much for being our special guest this week on Behind the Headlines. You're doing a great job with Global Lane, which can be seen exclusively on Revelation TV. Thank you for your excellent reporting, where you're giving moral clarity in this dark and dangerous world. And thanks for joining us today.
Simon, It's a pleasure. God bless you.
Thank you, Gary, for that really revealing report there. And yes, it's great to hear from you, and we do appreciate you joining us on the program today. Now, it's important for us to look at who the assassin was. His name, as we all know, if you've been watching the news, Thomas Matthew Crooks. He was the failed assassin. And the Telegraph reports that Thomas Matthew Crooks was only 20 years old, the 20-year-old failed assassin who was apparently a registered Republican and gun lover. The FBI say that they do not have a motive yet, as we've had confirmed, for Thomas Matthew Crooks' hideous crime. The man who shot Donald Trump has been identified as a 20-year-old registered Republican who was bullied at school and had an obsession with guns. Classmates described Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was killed by a Special Forces sniper after firing from a nearby roof at the former US president during a Pennsylvania rally, as an outcast who was relentlessly teased about his appearance. So It's
Yes, we have a loner. We have a loner, don't we?
Yeah,
we have a loner or an oddball or someone that wasn't popular at school, was a bit of a social outcast, and of course then he was only 20. So the fact that he would have literally been born in 2004 was quite an insight that someone so young would decide to take the life of the president. Now, whether this was the impact that he wanted to be popular, whether he wanted them because he faced so much bullying that he wanted to be known to be famous, very much like the same actor that assassinated Abraham Lincoln, and wanting to make a name for himself. But he would have known that he would have been killed by US Special Forces in the aftermath of doing this. But it's just very strange that he had no kind of social media footprint, no very little social media input. He seems to have been on these very secure kind of chat rooms, talking to other potential assassins that want to bring down the government. So, in terms of a motive, I think the FBI have to come out. Clearly, it was politically motivated. But it does say that according to Thomas Matthews, Crooks's contemporaries at school, he didn't voice any political opinions. Didn't express anything pretty much, but apart from the fact that he was bullied and then decided to get in his mind an evil plan, an evil plot to take out the president. Also what the police found as well, according to the Telegraph, that a car belonging to the government was found on Sunday, parked near the rally laden with explosives. Bomb-making materials also discovered at the family home after heavily armed US security agents carried out a raid on the property in Bethel Park, a village about an hour's drive south of Butler in Pennsylvania, the small hard-up post-industrial town where he tried to shoot Trump. It says that Crooks was reportedly wearing a t-shirt bearing the emblem of a pro-gun YouTube channel when he carried out the assassination attempt by firing a volley of bullets towards Donald Trump. And the Pentagon has confirmed that that Crooks did not have any military ties. The Pentagon have said in a statement, we've confirmed with each of the military service branches that there is no military service affiliation for the suspect with that name or date of birth in any branch, active or reserve component in the respective databases. And this was said by the Pentagon spokesman, Major General Patrick Ryder. Firstly, big questions have to be asked. The fact that he had an obsession with guns and how he was able to buy those guns. The fact that the police found bombs in his car and then they found bombs in his home. Now surely his parents have a responsibility because they would have known that he would have had guns. They would have known that he would have bombs in the house. So in the interests of protecting their son, surely this is something you go to the police with if you're a responsible parent. Yes, you love your son, but their son's dead now because they failed to take the responsibility that was necessary to alert the police to the fact that my son is acquiring guns and he's acquiring explosives. And he's weird and very strange, and surely those are huge question marks that have to be hanging over the parents belonging to Thomas Matthew Crooks.
I think without a doubt we're going to hear far more about the family background and the connection there, because at the end of the day the reports are very clear that he didn't buy the gun, it was the father's gun, because he was too young to be able to purchase a gun of that sort. So surely, maybe as a parent, I'm a parent, I've got kids of my own, it's the last possible thing you would imagine your child, your son, getting involved in, unless there's something further in the family makeup, which I'm sure will come through in the next few days and weeks as the story continues to grow. But for sure, the boy must have known the moment he pulled the trigger, no matter what the outcome was, whether it hit Donald Trump or not, that was the end of his life. The sniper's going to take him out. So that's a kind of very sad and worrying thought. Somebody would have a mindset, okay, he's been an outcast, as we talked about, not popular at school. What a way to get yourself into history books, to give up your life at the age of 20. Very, very sad for a family, but even that situation.
Yeah, we have to call it out as well. It was demonic. And so law enforcement sources say they believe the weapon used to shoot Trump was purchased by Crook's father, who bought the weapon at least 6 months ago. The gunman, who reportedly worked in a nursing home, did not have a criminal record, according to the Telegraph. History reflected in the Pennsylvania public court records, and the official said they had not identified a motive. So the Bethel Park Skilled Nursing and Rehabilitation Center said that Crooks performed his job without concern and his background check was clean. Unconfirmed videos and photos on the internet showed Crooks to be a tall, slender white man who wore glasses and had long, sandy brown hair. Voter registration data showed that he was a registered Republican voter. But on the 20th of Jan 2021, 2 weeks after the pro-Trump storming of the Senate building, where supporters stormed the Capitol building, Crooks gave a $15 or £11.80 donation to Grassroots, a Democratic group. Also says that bespectacled Crooks, who was pictured in his Bethel Park High School yearbook photo wearing a t-shirt with it, the American flag, was described by former classmates as an outcast. They said he was bullied daily. He was bullied almost every day and he would sit alone at lunch. I mean, he was just an outcast. And you know how kids are nowadays, said one former pupil. They say they go see someone like that and target him because they think it's funny or whatever. It's the best way I can describe it, and honestly, it's kind of sad. I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know, and I just have one more quote. He was bullied so much in high school, they made fun the way he dressed and his appearance, and this is said by Sarah D'Angelo, a former classmate of Brooks at Bethel Park High School, who told the Wall Street Journal, Crooks never appeared political at school. He never outwardly spoke about his political views or how much he hated Trump or anything, she told. The FBI said that Crooks was not carrying any identification when he made the assassination attempt and had to be identified using DNA samples. So there wouldn't have been much left of him after the snipers got him. But again, it's someone with a clean background. He doesn't have a criminal record. He's not part of a terrorist organization. He doesn't have much of an internet footprint. So someone who would definitely have gone under the radar in terms of the FBI and America's Secret Service and security forces. What possessed him to use his father's gun to carry out the assassination on Trump? Who knows? But we know that it was demonic and it was demonically inspired.
It's definitely a demonic, life-taking situation here for a young man who obviously had a tough school life, brought up as a shy and reclusive boy. And you know, we can see even from his allegiance to changing sides from Republican to Democrats, just as we've read there, he wasn't particularly political, but I would say he was probably easily led one way or another. So it's a very, very sad case, and one does feel for the parents. No matter what the situation is, we'll find out more, as I say, as time goes on. It's going to be quite a difficult time ahead for that family and the whole of that community where they live.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have to address the other important issue, and that is the extreme toxic and divisive rhetoric that hasn't just been used during this presidential election campaign, but has run right through when the very day that Donald Trump announced that he was running for US president back in 2016. Donald Trump has been demonized. We saw him come over to London, and there was a mock-up caricature of him in the streets of London. You know, those on the Labour Party have a lot to blame. You know, comparing him to a fascist authoritarian, the hatred for him on these streets of London was absolutely horrific. We've seen that with the Democrats, comparing him to a fascist, even comparing him to Hitler as well. And the rhetoric that's been used. And sadly, what we see today, whether it's in the United States, whether it's in our own country, the UK, or whether it's in Europe, those political parties and those political leaders like Nigel Farage, who essentially oppose the globalist ideas of the globalists, are vilified by their political opponents. They are absolutely vilified by our liberal left-wing media, and there's no place for this in politics. So hopefully after this, we can say that this literally will cause the shedding of blood, this violent incitement and hatred that we're seeing in our political discourse, whether it's in the other side of the Atlantic or whether it's here in the UK.
Yeah, I think we have seen a shift in the politics, the war of the politicians. And without a doubt for Donald Trump, from the moment he was the president, the world media were trying to use anything they could to throw at him, to take him off guard or to bring him down. So, and it's got worse and worse. There's no doubt. You know, even using words such as Hitler-like and that sort of stuff is just. It's just inciting the potential violence against him, and a character assassination. Okay, he's not the perfect character, we all know that, but who is? But as a presidential leader, he was strong, and certainly he loves his nation. He loves the USA. There's no doubt about it, and he does want to see America great again. You know, it's not just a slogan for his cap. It's what he believes. So I hope politicians and I hope media learn a lesson from this, because you know no one wants to see even your opponent assassinated or attempted to be assassinated. So let's believe there's going to be a change, and come on, as intercessors, let's be praying that there would be a change in our media and our politicians too. Yeah.
So Donald Trump's oldest son, Don Jr. Trump, has said the following on X, formerly known as Twitter. He expressed that media liberal outlets and rival politicians had radicalized his father's opponents by portraying him as a literal Hitler. So the left has been demonizing of their hatred of their opponent as a threat to democracy, of Hitlerian proportions, the hysterical fear-mongering about the fascist Trump from the mainstream media, taking heads like many of Trump's political opponents who are Democrats, saying even one Democrat said it would be a good thing if someone were to assassinate the former president. I also see that last month the left-wing News Republic depict Trump on their front cover of their magazine having a Hitler moustache and hairstyle. And the article's tagline was, "Why waste time debating the extent of Trump's fascism when we ought to be fighting it instead?" It says it reflects that the left has abandoned debate and dialogue and urged a sort of, by any means necessary, a direct action to stop the Trump juggernaut. And this demonization of Trump, comparing him to Hitler, and that image on the New Republic website and magazine is horrific. It's got Donald Trump with dark eyebrows, a Hitler mustache, so you're comparing him to a fascist. Now, everybody, and going back to history, said, well, what if we all had an opportunity to kill Hitler before he came to power, or during the early years of when he became Chancellor of Germany? We could have saved Jewish people from going to the Holocaust. We could have prevented a Second World War. And it's this same type of rhetoric that is having a deep impact on young, impressionable minds who are liberals, who see that Donald Trump and the MAGA Americans are a threat to their way of life, their liberal values, and so therefore it would be in the best interests, their best interest, they believe, to take Trump out because he's described as another Hitler, another fascist. And this is just lies, and so dangerous that we're seeing this dangerous political discourse.
Absolutely. So many of those statements that you've just read through and many others that we haven't read through were definitely insightful. And as you say, if it can get somebody with an unsound mind to to take action which you might not have even thought of before. I think politicians, leaders need to be so much more responsible in their actions and their words.
And have respect for their opponents.
Exactly.
Which is important. But I just want to read out this really disturbing quote. It says that Democrat Representative Benny Thompson had to fire his staffer. Jacqueline Morsell on Sunday posted a Facebook posting in which she lamented, "I don't condemn violence, but please get someone to have shooting lessons so that you don't miss next time." Oops, that wasn't me talking. Thompson, you will recall, also was the congressional man who spearheaded a failed bill to attempt to deny Donald Trump to have a Secret Service protection, and had he not had that Secret Service protection, he would have died. We're seeing that Democrats are criticizing Biden's political election campaign that is misleading and portrays, and no doubt, as a bar struggle between democracy and authoritarianism. Now, I found this excellent CBN News report dating back to early September 2022, where we are literally seeing US President Joe Biden describe Trump and his supporters, the MAGA Americans, as the biggest authoritarian threat to US democracy. This plays a large part in inciting hatred and violence that we saw with the attempted assassination on Donald Trump on Saturday, the 13th of July.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
President Biden revived his 2020 campaign phrase, "Soul of the Nation," Thursday for his primetime speech in Philadelphia. It kicks off a 2-month fight as Democrats try to hold on to control of the House and Senate in the midterm elections. And the president came out swinging.
No matter what the white supremacists and the extremists say, I made a bet on you, the American people, and that bet is paying off. But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, we are not powerless in the face of these threats.
Biden's speech catered to a top concern held by Americans. A recent poll shows threats to American democracy leads the pack at 29%, with both sides apparently blaming the other for that threat. It was tied with the cost of living. Jobs in the economy are a close second at 28%, followed by immigration and climate change.
Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology.
The speech came just over 2 months before the midterm elections. Biden's approval ratings have rebounded, but still remain low in the 42% range. Republicans have been favored to take back the House of Representatives. And although Democrats have gained some momentum recently, the GOP still seems to hold the advantage, and Republicans criticized Biden's attacks.
The first lines out of his mouth should be to apologize for slandering tens of millions of Americans as fascists.
Many Republicans believe the president's address will further divide the country, and that it was nothing more than a campaign speech, turning voters' attention away from other issues. It's a messaging tactic analysts say Biden has used before.
It comes right on the heels of, the raid on Mar-a-Lago and several other things that seem to be kind of gearing up for, we have to get the American public's mind turned away from things like maybe the economy or the immigration situation, and we have to begin to focus in on the fear. You must fear the other party.
And this is a nation that rejects violence as a political tool. We do not encourage violence. We are still an America that believes in honesty and decency.
And former President Trump responded to the speech on Truth Social. Someone should explain to Joe Biden slowly but passionately that MAGA means, as powerfully as mere words can get, make America great again. If he doesn't want to make America great again, which through words, action, and thought, he doesn't, then he certainly shouldn't be representing the United States of America. End quote. Brody Carter, CBN News.
And that really goes to show you how dangerous political rhetoric can be, and to say that MAGA Americans, or those who support Donald Trump and his supporters, share an extreme dangerous ideology that's a threat to US democracy. We actually recorded a Behind the Headlines program on President Biden's dystopian speech, so you can have a look at that on the archives. Now, it's interesting, I just want to read out briefly that Tim Stanley, writing for the Daily Telegraph, writes, try awesome, this is the survival of Trump, like Moby Dick or the Terminator. Trump is an unstoppable force. Think of all this man has gone through in 8 years. He has been impeached twice, accused of rape, arrested, condemned in court, labelled a traitor, survived COVID, and now shot in the ear. Who can doubt he will win in November? And of course, this gives Trump huge political momentum, and we see that when the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan in March 1981, that increased his poll rating by 8%. There'll be no doubt Americans will see Trump as being strong in comparison to Joe Biden, and saying this is who we want as our next president. Yeah,
I think definitely the reaction he made, even out of that shocking moment, he still, when they got him up, and he was shouting, fight, fight, fight. And I'm sure people are going to be impressed by that determination to just continue the fight. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be a spike in the election results. And you said earlier, it seems like a new president coming.
Well, Alistair, thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Headlines. I appreciate you, and I know our viewers do as well, so thank you so much. And I just want to thank you for watching this program at home. There can be absolutely no doubt that we saw the grace of God upon US President Donald Trump on Saturday the 13th of July, because had that bullet gone a couple of centimetres towards his head, this could have sparked civil war in the United States. This could have sparked political violence and chaos. By the grace of God, he's alive, and by the grace of God, America's saved. So I want to thank you for watching this week's edition of Behind the Headlines.